All right, today we're going to talk about glaciers. So as you might have guessed, glaciers are going to form in cold areas. So you either need to be at high elevations in the mountains, or you need to be in a colder climate like Greenland or Antarctica near the polar regions where there's less direct sunlight. So you're going to have snow accumulating and refreezing and recrystallizing together to make your glacier. And this is going to occur in several ways. So in high elevations, your snow is accumulating at the top, and then it would be melting at the bottom. On a continental glacier, they're sometimes seasonal. So accumulation would be during your winter months, and then melting would be during your spring and summer months. This is just a little visual to show you how a piece of debris can move through a glacier. So it moves down and it goes through all the way through. So now it's moving down the hill. It's going to be eventually going to hit the sunlight's going to melt. It's going to be exposed and it'll be deposited. And those deposits are going to be a variety of different things that you can see for deposits. You can see till or outwash. And till and outwash are both going to be results of material in the glacier melting and being dropped off. Abrasion is an example that we heard with wind. And abrasion is when something is being rubbed against an object. And it can leave things like striations. It can polish the rock. And it can scour the rock, which is just a fancy word for carve into it. And this is an example of a mountain glacier. You have your mountain beforehand, and then you have the snow forming. And you see the little C's. Those are for cirques. A cirque is a carved out piece of a mountain. It looks like an ice cream scoop. It's just carved right in there. So a cirque carves out the mountain, and then you're going to be left with some other features like moraines. Moraines are deposits left by the glacier as it moves away. You're going to have drumlins, which are those elongated moraines that we talked about that are kind of shaped like this little shape of sort of like a teardrop, if you will. And then you have aretes. Aretes are the areas between each cirque that are raised up. And then you have horns on the very top. If it's pointy, it's been eroded away. You'll have a horn on the very top. And then the very bottom is the U-shaped valley. And it's the entire large valley that's carved as multiple glaciers come down and meet and then make this very large valley. And it gets its name from the shape. It's very rounded on the bottom. So you have cirques, are like the ice cream scoop that's been scooped out of the side of the mountain. You have moraines, which are dropped off sediments. You have drumlins, which are elongated moraines. You have your U-shaped valley here. Your arete are in between the cirques, the raised up areas between the cirques. You have horns that are pointy parts on the top. Occasionally you'll even have eskers. Eskers are when the glacier itself is melting and it's making windy rivers underneath it, and they deposit windy sediment layers. And that's an esker. Continental glaciers, they have less motion, but they still do have deposits. So you'll see things like kettle lakes. Kettle lakes result from a stationary portion of the glacier melting, and the weight of the glacier itself actually creates a depression which then fills with water to make a lake. Here's our drumlins we were talking about. These are the elongated ones. You have moraines up here. The moraines are the piles of till, and then if it moves through the moraine, it can make these drumlins. And here's an esker, which would be the winding layers of sediments. Each different one is sort of an indication of different things going on. Drumlins indicate movement. Moraines indicate melting and movement. Eskers are indications of melting. You have your outwash plain where all of your water from the glacier is going to wash out and drop off sediment. But the glacier isn't just a block of ice. There's a lot of things going on. Greenland is a great example. Greenland, its highest elevation is the middle, which is what this is indicating. And Greenland was named Greenland by the Vikings. It's not green at all. It's actually one giant glacier. And its climate is slightly cooler due to the glacier itself. So it's kind of interesting. And Antarctica has kind of been a recent thing of study. Originally, people thought it was just ice. There wasn't anything there. But we now know that there's large coal deposits underneath all of the ice below that Arctic circle area. And this just shows you where we have stations. These are the South Pole Research Station. Some of the major countries have their own stations. The United States has their own section. Russia has its own section over by Lake Vostok. And Lake Vostok, we just found out, is actually water underneath the layers of ice, and some bacteria exist there. So there's actually life underneath the ice, which was something we couldn't imagine years ago, but now we realize to be true. So just remember, and here's an actual picture of Lake Vostok. If you can see that, it's just an indentation on the ice. You can't even tell it's there, but underneath that ice of Lake Vostok, you actually have a real lake with organisms living in it. So just to recap, glaciers are going to have some parts that you want to remember. The parts are the important part. So you've got drumlins, elongated moraines. Moraines are deposits or piles of sediment as the glacier moves. Eskers are winding layers of sediment deposited by a melting glacier. You have outwash plain, where sediments are going to wash out and be dropped off as the glacier melts. Kettle lakes form as the glacier's weight creates a hole that fills with water as it melts. And just keep in mind, always changing. So that's glaciers in a nutshell. In your two types, you have continental and mountain glaciers or alpine glaciers.